All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast out there, and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, one of your hosts here, alongside Nick and Jess, and we are going to be getting into the transfer window. That's right, the business is done and dusted. A little bit of drama at the end of it with the whole Nico Jackson transfer saga that was, and then wasn't, and then was finally for sure, but maybe with an obligation and tons of other things to consider. But look, we are going to cover the incomings, the outgoings. We're going to take a look at the total window. We're also going to take a look at the squad, talking about if they're better, worse, or about the same as they were heading into the window. And then also take a look at some of the questions that are still on our minds about what happens with players like Raheem Sterling, Ty George, Axel Disasi, who were rumored or thought to be going, but didn't actually end up leaving during the window. And Nick, we just have to kick it right into some 3-word window reviews to set the expectation, give people an idea of what our mood is heading into this episode, because I think we are a little bit across the spectrum here in terms of our feelings about how the window operated, how the window ended, and then also how we feel about the squad now heading into 35 more Premier League games to play this season, in addition to all the other matches that Chelsea are going to have on their way to winning the Champions League.
It's impossible to get you to stop, isn't it? You're never gonna. Okay.
Until we're bounced out of the competition, it's always on offer.
Man, that's right. It's the international break, which means I must prepare this year's stinger, which is going to be a treat for everybody. I went with the horse drawing. I'm sure everyone's seen the meme of the horse that goes from incredibly detailed all the way to cartoonish, from tail to head. That's basically this transfer window. Incredibly good start. Some really great business done. Chelsea win the Club World Cup. Momentum. Make a couple of decent signings in the middle, and then the end is kind of cartoonish and chaotic and not my favorite thing that's ever happened. So for those who haven't seen that, we'll just post it when we put up the socials for this pod.
We'll make sure that Jake drops it somewhere in the YouTube video too, to see if we can just have it overlaid for a second. Jess, what was your 3-word window review?
My review is like very boring, very classic, but it's just the sentiment that I felt throughout the window, which is ups and downs, like normal Chelsea roller coaster where you're just very excited about transfer news one day and then it just completely crashes and burns the next day. But then 2 hours later you get hope and you think everything's going to be all right, and then it just crashes again, or so just that feeling of very high, like high highs and low lows. It was just kind of how I felt.
I mean, it definitely had some dopamine hits, and then also had some moments of WTF, and then in addition to also some what are the actual fuck we doing in this moment type of scenarios with the sporting directors and what was getting executed on the day. A lot of work left to the end to get players out and then actually back into the side, like loan cancellations. I went with mostly better, because I think that generally we are better in a couple of key areas where we needed to be. The business we didn't do in terms of not going after some certain players that I think necessarily weren't additive in terms of like, did they improve the squad in a net for the value they were looking to get? I generally think we end up this window as a better side heading into it. But let's just transition to the fact, like, we'll look at the total business in the window. All these numbers are taken from Transfer Market, so you can go there to take a look and kind of compare the information that we're using in this episode. But when you look at total spend across the window, Chelsea finished second overall, right behind Liverpool, who are just absolutely still flush with Coutinho money. It's absolutely absurd that multiple windows later, they still have that money. They invested it all in Bitcoin, and they are just reaping the rewards years later for those smart decisions. They spent 482.9 million euro, Chelsea 328.15. We had, according to Transfer Market, now some of the arrival numbers are weird because they count like loan returnees as a part of it for net numbers, but they have 26 arrivals, not actually the real number. And then income, we have actually 332.25 million euros with 23 departures. That also counts one loan cancellation or loan ending in Jadon Sancho for a net of 4.1 million euros.
Earned.
Earned. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, earned. Yes, which is quite the boon considering that around us in that table there, Nick, you have Liverpool number one spend. I mean, they were negative 263.4. You had Arsenal negative 283.2. You had, I mean, a bunch of other teams here who spent. I mean, you have to go all the way down to ninth with Leverkusen, who were plus 31.35. AC Milan somehow ended up positive at 5.3 and 13th position overall. But I don't know. Like, I guess it's the overall, like, high level take on the window.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's notable that the first 8 teams on here are all English. It's probably not a massive surprise. It's the state of the league. Everything's hyperinflated. Just give it up for Arsenal and their 10 million euros generated from player sales. Well done again, boys. Just tremendous stuff. You guys continue to kill it. Look, it was a big summer. A lot of really high profile moves were made across the British landscape for sure. And I think Arsenal and Liverpool definitely made the biggest of those moves, especially Liverpool getting Isak on deadline day. That was, a ridiculous high profile move. Broke the British transfer record twice this summer casually. So Liverpool, just plucky old Liverpool. Don't worry about them. I will say this for us, breaking the 300 million euro mark in terms of player sales is a pretty extraordinary feat. We will go through the sales, like kind of what they all garnered individually and stuff like that. But this was a huge, we said this at the beginning of the window. I kind of go back to what we talked about when we first started the transfer window. It was always more about sales than it was about incomings for this team, because there's been so much acquisition by Clear Lake in terms of players since they became the club owners, that eventually you're going to have to churn in the sale direction. And they definitely did this summer. They definitely put a heck of a lot of work into player sales, some of which I love, some of which I absolutely do not love. And I will get there in a second. But, that is an extraordinary figure. And I think it does validate, somewhat their strategy this summer, even if not everything went perfectly.
And then just starting to take a look at the incomings and the rivals. I mean, João Pedro ends up being the most expensive of our summer signings from Brighton at 63.7 million euros. Then, Jamie Gittins, Garnacho, Hato, Delap, Estevao officially comes in this summer. Oswego ends up coming in. Sarr comes in, but he goes out on loan. Paez officially comes in. And then Bonanate comes in off of nowhere with the end loan. I mean, that's generally a list that has one or two kind of like, this person came in and solved a problem for Chelsea signings throughout Pedro, obviously with a very, very hot start. You have Hato come in, ends up being the cover we were all looking for Marc Cucurella, which I think had all of us as a big kind of concern point. And then you get some excitement from an attacking perspective, where out of Estevao, Garnacho, and Gittins, you figure you're going to hit on hopefully one, if not two, potentially, to help your attack. And so in general, I mean, how did you feel about just the incomings overall in terms of, hitting what you were looking for in terms of what you wanted to see Chelsea add to the squad?
Again, this is a difficult question. You like difficult questions. Because
I do.
the thing is, I know.
Try being with them for 12 years now. This is all I get.
Dan
questions.
is always like making me think and be very boring, because I have to give like proper answers and not just straight answers. But the thing is, I had an expectations before the window, and there were certain positions that I wanted us to address. One of them mainly being cover for Cucurella, which we did do, and the other being the goalkeeper. Obviously, that didn't happen. So if you go by what I wanted to see at the start of the window, I wanted a striker, left back, cover, and possibly, hopefully, a goalkeeper. Out of all of these, only the goalkeeper situation didn't really get addressed. We're gonna get into the whole striker situation later on, I'm sure of it. But with the goalkeeper, it's it's very hard to analyze, because on one hand, I think people over hate on Robert Sanchez. I don't think he is a terrible goalkeeper. I think he's very a good shot stopper, incredible in the air, great at cross claiming. But it's like, you know what he can give you. And I think the majority of the Chelsea fan base don't feel that confident that you can really aspire to those tires with him. So it's one position that I feel disappointed that we didn't address, but at the same time, I understand the circumstances around all of it, because you have to find the right fit in terms of age profile, having Penders, and you don't want to spend on another upcoming goalkeeper that can't displace Robert Sanchez like we did before. So it's one that I'm kind of, I don't want to judge the window solely on this because of being trying to be rational, but emotionally, this particular position made me a little bit disappointed. Thinking logically, do I think having him will stop us achieving like possibly top four or certain goals that I had for our season prior to this? No, I don't think so. But I also don't think we can really compete for the Premier League as we have right now. But overall, in terms of incomings, I can't complain too much because I wanted three positions addressed. I think we addressed two of the positions that I really wanted. And for me, the incomings go way further than just players that we acquired this summer. It's a lot more also about players that I really wanted us to keep. Obviously, Andre is a big one. So I know it may be silly, but to me, it counts like a big signing because it's a position that we needed to address. And having Champions League and a lot of other competitions, and you want to go further in all of France, and you have Enzo and you have Caicedo, and you need to be able to rotate with them, which we didn't really necessarily have the means to do last season in terms of quality depth and somebody that could sustain us through that. And right now, keeping Andre, I feel a lot more comfortable with injuries and all of that. So I count keeping him as a big signing. I'm also very happy that we kept Josh, and I would put him in the kind of level of excitement that I have with Andre, keeping Josh as well. So it might be silly for some, but I do count those as big wins this summer. And all of those, keeping Andre, keeping Josh, they were things on my checklist, like the bare minimum that I have. Okay, going into the seasons, those are things that you'd have to do, and anything else or everything else is a bonus. So I'm very happy that we made smart choices when it comes to like Josh and Andre and even Stevan, which I wasn't expecting him to get all of the minutes that he has been getting so far. Thankfully he has been great for us in my opinion as well. So I am happy. It's like, I agree with you, what you mentioned before. I think we are in a better place compared to when we started the last season. But at the same time, there's a little bit of disappointment because I think that we could have and potentially should have strengthened even further.
Nick, to the Jess's point here, you also have things like Trev Chalobah staying versus being sold. There are some, I think, wins that you could count in terms of players that you didn't sell or move on and kept them or promoted them, like the Josh comment there, that would go under the radar in another window, but actually are the additions through not doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, are we going to grade the arrivals, or are we going to do the squad thing now? Because I'm either way, I'm fine doing that. I just I think on the arrivals itself, I'd probably grade it as like a B-, somewhere there.
You can grade. I'm happy with a grade. Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
I think it's a B-. I think João Pedro, Stevao, Hato, those are the major ones. Kendry is like a future grade for me. We don't have him here. Buonanotte is a nothing loan, a dry loan, which is clearly just a favor to get Enciso over to Strasbourg. So it is what it is. Asugo will prove valuable this season, I believe, but we don't know enough yet. Liam Delap is obviously now injured, but certainly not like the finished article at number 9. Gittins and Garnacho are going to have to kind of prove themselves in this team, and I'm still very unsure of the left wing. And then Sarr is obviously back at Strasbourg. So I think it's a B minus. I would have really liked to see extra striker cover, and I agree with Jess. I would have liked to see extra goalkeeper cover as well. I think just not spending an extra $5 million on Mignon will could potentially come back to bite us this season. Not will, but might.
Jess, you have a grade for the window in terms of the incomings?
I mean, using like your system with ABCs, possibly a B. I think it's a bit hard for me, but only on incomings. Like if I go like for Brazilian system, I would say like 7.5 maybe. If you're just talking about incomings, if you're talking about like the
out of
whole
10?
keeping out of 10, yeah. But if you're
So it's like a
talking
C plus. Yeah.
Okay, C plus.
Yeah.
That is. Oh, that's tough. But yes, that would be it. 7.5. But then again, taking into account the whole thing, like the keeping players and all of that,
hold on
then it
that.
would be a lot higher.
We'll hold that for a second here.
Okay.
Let's get our first ad
I'm
break
trying
out
to
of the way.
be
Then we'll come
nice.
back
I'm trying to be nice.
You are trying to be nice, and we appreciate that. But let's be nice to our sponsors real quick, give them an opportunity, and then we come back and we'll talk about the outgoings. So stay tuned. All right, it's time about outgoings. Chelsea sold a bunch of players this window. We talked about the number earlier. I mean, at the tippity top of the tree is Nani Madueke, 56 million euros to Arsenal. Nkunku, Joao Felix, Petrovic, Ogachukwu at 28.7 million euros to Burnley. You had Dewsbury Hall to Everton, 28.65. Renato Vega goes. Broya goes. Chukwuemeka goes. Nico Jackson goes on a loan fee with an obligation over a certain amount of appearances. Loan fee of 16.5 million euros. If the deal goes through, it'll be Bayern Munich's biggest ever purchase. Like, absolutely, just like, or I think like one of their largest purchases. You have Amogu, Humphreys, Kepa, Bettinelli we sold for a fee to like who just wanted to leave for vibes, and we got money for him. You had Gilchrist leave. And then that's not including any of the free transfers or loan transfers that we had too. Ben Chilwell goes to Strasbourg. You had Bergstrom, who left as well. Sarr ends up going on loan to Strasbourg. Penders goes on loan to Strasbourg. Paez goes on loan to Strasbourg. And Salmino goes to Dortmund. And then you'd Guiu go to Sunderland, but then also come back from Sunderland. Like, this was a massive window of sales. And I think some of these, I was generally shocked at the fee we were able to get for the player. Like Nkunku at 37 million to AC Milan, who we know over the history of Chelsea Football Club, they have not liked out and out buying players from us. They have liked the whole, why don't you just loan us the player for a year and then maybe later we'll buy them, or we'll buy them on an obligation and it's going to be like super low and like absolutely chill. Like, we actually got like the straight sale. So, I mean, Nick, in this regard, there's a lot of impressive work that went into clearing out the side and moving us into a position where we don't have a lot of people waiting around looking for minutes or having to think about what their loan structure looks like or a future move looks like for them. Like, we cleared out a lot of deals, like Dewsbury Hall, where you could argue he in the previous regime would have been like Danny Drinkwater and hung around for a couple of years until we figured out what to do with him. And we said, no, we're going to cut and run, and we're going to get a fee, and then we're going to move on to doing work with the players that we want here at Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like grade, I would give this an A minus. I think it would have been an A across, or even an A plus without the whole Jackson saga at the end. So I'll go A minus because I do think there's some pretty significant work in here. I think a lot of the conversation, post transfer deadline day has been around like Chelsea's player trading and what it means to sign for Chelsea. And are you just cannon fodder for a future transfer if you sign for Chelsea and you're a young player and all this sort of stuff? And there's some of that, in here. And I do, genuinely understand, the rhetoric around that. I don't think it's like way, way, way off base. But I also do think that there's a fair amount of good things that happened here. Like Dewsbury Hall is killing it at Everton early this season, right? Having a great time. Armando Broya gets a fresh start, at Burnley, right? Which I think is great. Ugachukwu was the same. Noni Madueke is probably going to play a lot this year because Bukayo Saka is always injured, and now he's going to be their default right winger. And all these things down the line. Carney Chukwuemeka does finally get his dream move to Dortmund, all this sort of stuff. So I'm not only pleased with the sales, I do think that the loans are very good as well, and for almost everybody. I think the David Washington one, I think, is probably the loan standout in the loans that doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to me. But if you're talking about Sar, Paez, and Penders to Strasbourg to have an incredible opportunity to develop and play a ton of minutes in a campaign where they're also going to be in Europe this year, that is very, very good. And that is kind of the purpose of having like a sister club is, yes, we took Andre back and he is now with us as he should be, but we've also then given back. And, Ben Chilwell gets to go and play some football ahead of a World Cup year and maybe get back into the England squad. So I'm going A-. I do think there was some very good work. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly, took most of the summer to get all this done, but it was much more of a selling summer than a buying summer, and they did a pretty spectacular job here.
Just any of the sales that you are more happy with in terms that we were able to get across the line, or ones that you're concerned about relative to how it's left the squad maybe weaker, even though the fee was positive? I mean, I think, we could talk about the Jackson sale element in this regard a little bit if you want to, or we can talk about something you're very excited about in terms of like, how did we get Joao Felix out of the club for 30 million euros?
Mhm.
Shocking.
Miracle.
Yeah, I think I agree with Nick here. I think the sales have been outstanding. When you look back, and maybe you can point to like Disasi and Sterling, but outside of them, every like heavy hitter players with huge wages, players that weren't really being impactful with her squad, managed to move out after that crazy summer that we had last time, and there was a lot of mistakes, but they were quickly rectified this summer. So I'm very happy with that. I'm also very surprised with some of the fees that we're able to get. Obviously, you mentioned João Felix. I was actually expecting, I think everybody was expecting him to move, but following like the Portuguese media, it was pretty much certain that he was going to Benfica, and there was a lot of talk about small fee and loans and all of those possibilities, and the fact that he went for a big fee. I mean, I know it's Saudi, but it was unexpected. Also, I think Danny mentioned Nkuku, and I think in terms of the fee that we got, his was probably the one I was most surprised with, because it's for AC Milan. I think Fulham might have helped us a little bit there with their dealings and giving money to AC Milan to then have them come for Nkuku for us. So that one was a bit surprising. I also say Broya was surprising, not because of his talent, but because obviously he struggled with injuries. And I think his fee was quite significant. If I'm not mistaken, it was like 20 million pounds. And so that's very significant for a player that hasn't been really playing and had loans that didn't really work out. I mean, obviously we all know his talent, but it is a risk from Burnley. So I was surprised a little bit with that. And as far as the negative, it has to be Jackson. I think we'll talk about him further along, but it's not so much the fee itself for me personally. I think I might disagree with Nick here, because I was never opposed to selling Jackson per se, but it was the timing of it all that kind of made the sale really annoying to me, and it felt like we would have more benefit keeping him around. So for that reason alone, I would say the Jackson move was a negative out of all of the sales, but it was fantastic. I think the fact that we see the media talking about it and positive, in a positive light, it's very telling, because they are very quick to stone anything Chelsea related, right? So I think it helps. I'll give a complaint, because I think it helps the fact that Liverpool spent so much. And I saw a comment on X today that said, because Liverpool spent so much, and watch everything now be about net spend this season because of how much they spend. So they are not first every time, because if you go by whoever, the club that spent the most, it's going to be them. So I think this talk about net spend, maybe to benefit Liverpool, we don't know, but it kind of shown the light
Always.
towards Chelsea, and it people have to talk about how incredible Chelsea were at sales and outgoings, and it's been on the mind and the voices in the media, and I think that's telling.
I mean, Nick, they will find every opportunity to reformat the way we think about spend, as in a moment where Liverpool have spent a crazy amount of money and will somehow have the plucky underdog mentality ascribed to them per usual.
Yeah, it's always moving the goalposts. It's always being the victims. Like that's just the way it is. I mean, part of why I fell in love with Chelsea is because we play the villain so well, and I think in every story, you do need a team that just doesn't care what the media thinks. Like I don't care what Jamie Carragher says anymore about anything. He has proven himself to just be a stooge, and so the narrative around everything will be, wow, Liverpool, incredible club. And they did some great business this summer. It's props to them. Like, this is not me saying that they didn't do good business. This is me just saying, for them and for Arsenal, the rules are different in the media. They can spend all the money in the world. They can sell very few players for very little money, and everything's hunky dory. The minute that Chelsea try a new strategy, were the bane of everyone's existence. 'Twas ever thus, right? So I don't really mind that anymore. And in fact, the more that we get back to ruining parties, the better off that I think we are. Because if we're going to be the villain for all the other stuff, we might as well be the villain holding the trophy at the end of the season, and then give the media something else to talk about. So that's kind of where I am there. I think on the Jackson piece, Dan, to me, everyone knows where I sat with Nico. I love Nico. I want Nico to stay. We were there for his second red card in Philly. I thought that might be the moment that he was looked to be moved on. That kind of proved to be right. I think we are woefully short up top without Nico. I don't think Mark Guiu is going to fill much of a void, especially as it pertains to uh, the Champions League this year. I think a lot is being put on the back of João Pedro, who is proving to be an incredible signing, but is, kind of up there by himself without a healthy Delap. And it's a very, 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 very big gamble. So that, to me, not only is it stupid to do a loan with it basically is an option turning into an obligation once the threshold is met for appearances, but you leave yourself woefully short. So I'm very concerned about this. Everyone knows that I am. It's my last piece on it, and I hope it doesn't bite us in the ass.
I think the only thing I would add is, so if it ends up going out as intended, it'll be 81.5 million euro for the entirety of the deal. You'll have it being Bayern Munich's record buy for a player. And like, if he was truly viewed as the third choice striker in this team, which you would argue, behind Delap and João Pedro, he absolutely was. Like, there is not another club in the world selling their third choice striker for that much money. Now, I concede your point on, with the Delap injury and the whole turnabout that Chelsea were looking to do, that would it have made more sense to keep him this year? Yes, it would have. 100%. I think you are absolutely spot on with that view and that opinion. I think the challenge is now that you've made the sale, how are you going to head into next summer or the winter and find somebody to come in and upgrade the squad with the amount of investment you've brought in off of someone like Nico and off of these other players?
Oh,
Yeah,
can
and
I
look,
just? I'm
ma-
sorry
yeah,
to just interject, because you're talking about how can you do that. I mean, there have been rumblings in Brazil today. I don't know if you've seen anything about Chelsea recalling David Washington. So keep an eye out for that, because I think it's very, very
There we
possible
go.
that he's going to be the solution. So we'll see.
I mean, I still think that leaves us woefully short, right? I mean, is Nico gonna potentially kill it in the Bundesliga? I would have all the confidence in the world with those high line defenses and lack of man marking and lack of physicality and a lot of German defenses that he wouldn't get in behind and score a bunch of goals. I think the other risk that you do run though, Dan, is like, I think you're assuming the sale, which is kind of, the salesman's technique. You just assume that everything's going to go perfectly. What if he sucks and they don't play him that much?
You can't be a Jackson believer and then go on to harp on how he might suck at
I
Bayern
believe
Munich.
in him. I believe he's going to score 17 plus goals for them this year. I do. I believe that to be true. But
If he scores
it's not
17
a guarantee.
goals, he probably
it's not a guarantee, Dan.
He probably hit the appearance mark. That's all I'm saying. Like, if your narrative saying he's going to go out and score 17 goals, he probably hit whatever appearance mark there is in that contract to execute it.
I'm just saying there's not only one way to look at this. Like,
oh no, I agree.
The risk that you take is that he doesn't play that well. They don't play him that much because then they realize that they don't want to have the obligation. And we've seen that happen at other clubs with other loans too. So it's a complicated one because I know people are very divided on Nico. He's probably the most polarizing player at the club. And for all the reasons that we all know, there are a lot of people telling me how much he sucks in my mentions all weekend. I was very excited that he was potentially going to be back. And I think you could have argued that he would have started against Brentford if he would still been at the club post international break. So all that being said, I'm disappointed in this one, but I just really do hope that everyone else's hamstrings stay intact. And that we're able to be as healthy as humanly possible, because remember what happened last year when Jackson got hurt. You had Pedro Neto doing a service, but not really doing a great job up top. And you had a lot of shifting around, and that was kind of the dark time in terms of scoring goals. We know that we need to score 20 plus more league goals to be in contention this year. I'm just wondering where they're going to come from. That's all.
João Pedro's trying to find a way to make the answer to that question very easy for you. So, look, we'll take our last ad break, and when we get back, we are going to talk about the position groups. The better or worse are about the same, a little bit of an optometrist view of our starting 11, and then also our depth of the squad. So stay tuned. We are back. All right, so we're going to go position group by position group. We're going to start from the back, Brandon Busby's favorite position, the goalkeepers. We're going to then go all the way up to the attack. So we're going to look at it: goalkeepers, defense, midfield, and attack. We're going to talk about if they are better, worse, or about the same season over season in terms of a grouping. And I mean, just like we'll look at it here, goalkeeper. We have Sanchez, we have Jorgensen, we have Slonina as our kind of 1, 2, 3 here. You have Penders on loan, you have Sharman Lowe on loan, and then you have left the club Petrovic on a sale, Kep on a sale, Bergstrom on a free, and then Bettinelli on a sale. So I'm going to say, just to kick it off, Jess, it's about the same. You have a pathway for Penders still. Magnan would have been an upgrade, not a lateral. That was probably the one opportunity. Chelsea didn't get knocked off the number that they felt like he was worth. I wish I didn't brief it as much, because it looks dumb when you brief very heavily that you're going to get a deal done and then you don't do it. But I feel as if we're about the same as we were. Sanchez is a known article. Like, you know what you get with him. Jorgensen is not necessarily great as a backup. Slonina is your third choice, but just like Bettinelli, he will probably not see a minute of football if everything goes according to plan this season. So I say it's about the same. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's about the same, with a little bit of hope, which is Penders for me. I rate him incredibly highly, and I think I'm going to be watching Strasbourg just as closely this season as I was last season. And last season was because of Andre. This season, obviously, I have more players to look at, but it's, majorly because of Mike Penders and because I believe in him so much. And also the fact that it's a position that I'm not entirely confident in and comfortable with what we have. So it's that hopeful thing that keeps you going. But I'm not happy with the position. I think we needed to strengthen. As I said in the beginning, I understand the circumstances around it all. The Mike Magnan thing is the one that kind of irks me. When not kind of irks me, it irks me completely, because I just don't understand. Because in my opinion, he was exactly what I wanted us to target. Someone that had experience, the age difference that would allow Mike Penders to have that path. And also, in my opinion, upgraded us immediately and had the means and the toolkit that Enzo Maresca likes and wants in a goalkeeper, with the distribution and all of that. So he is the one that I don't understand. The minute that we walked out of the deal or decided not to pursue it, it was very hard for me to find another goalkeeper, another alternative that could fit the mode of what I thought was logical in this position. So yeah, I'm going to say about the same, but hopeful with Mike Benders.
And Nick, what's your grade on the goalkeeping unit?
I mean, it's the same. I mean, it's a 7 out of 10 for me, or a C in American grading. I do think this is an area that I hope won't cost us games. I hope just kind of like stays level, and that the increased production up top will carry us over the line in terms of the goals that we want. But I don't anticipate this position being our savior for the season. So if you're looking for that, I think that's a whole different kettle of fish. So about 7 out of 10 for me, or a C.
Well, then let's go to the defense. I'm going to say that if you take out the Cole injury, which no one could kind of really plan against as it happened and obviously puts us in a bad situation. You added Hato from a left back. You didn't necessarily add any type of lateral defenders. You didn't go in for big money for a player that didn't upgrade the squad. So you have a left back situation of Kukure and Hato. You had Wiley leave on loan, as well as Ben Chilwell leaving the club kind of permanently. You have Badia Shield, Cole injured, Sar out on loan, and Vega leaves. You have Chalaba, West Fafana, Disasi, Tosin, and then Anselmino leaves on loan. And then you have Gusto James and Josh with Gilchrist leaving. That's your defensive unit. I think it actually ends up being just slightly better than last year, Nick. One, from the development year over year with some of the players. And then two, the biggest problem was, do you have backup for Marc Cucurella? The answer is yes. We haven't seen how good that backup is yet. But you have a promising young defender who is now going to be able to take minutes from him in competitions. And that was the biggest concern I had across that entire back line heading into this window.
Yeah, and I think a refreshed role for Malo Gusto in this as well, kind of being more of the wing back instead of the winger. I think the area, I have this as an 8 out of 10 or a B. I think the area that I really, really do worry about, if Bade Shield and Fafana are not healthy for at least half or a little more than half, maybe like 65% of the matches this year, that could be a big issue. That could be buying in January type of issues at center back. So right now, you have Tosin and Trev Chalaba holding it down in the center. Ideally, you would get Badia Shield and Fafana back healthy. You'd have Josh as an auxiliary player who can do any of the jobs basically across the back line. And you have, two really strong fullback options in each role. I think that is a good one. But without Badia Shield and Fafana healthy right now, I cannot give it a 9, which is what I would really like to. Add Colwell back in. I think you have a pretty incredible back line potentially, but I'm going to give it an 8 for now and just hope and pray that they are back and healthy and contributing.
And Jess, are you in the same mind as Nick there, or do you have a differing opinion?
I mean, am I supposed to grade it with everybody fit? Because if I have Levi,
I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah, okay. Because if I have Levi fit, I'm incredibly comfortable. I don't think we need to look like elsewhere. I think we are pretty set defensively. As you mentioned before, the position that we needed to strengthen, in my opinion, was the cover for Cucurella. We've done that. So in that sense, we have strengthened. But Levi Cowell's injury kind of put in the balance. I think we're weaker compared to last season. Maybe people won't agree with me, but that's just how I feel without him in the picture. When it comes to fullbacks, we are very strong. But then in the center backs, I understood the idea behind some people wanting a center back. But I personally didn't want it because I believe in Josh so much that I think he can develop and help us out in that sense. And I also didn't see anyone in the market with the characteristics that I wanted the potential center back to come in. And I also don't think the club would move for a center back unless they were about to sell either Badiashile or Fofana. So I understood the optics out of it. I still think we have a very good unit, but because I think Levi's is so impactful, I would say it's slightly worse when compared to last season. But that's also just analyzing names on paper, because as you mentioned, we haven't even seen Hato yet. So, I mean, I know he can play on the left, even though not ideally in the back four, but he can do the back three role very well. And so we're yet to see a few things, and whether or not Josh we're going to get regular minutes, whether Fofana is going to come back fit, Badiashile is going to come back fit, because Fofana, we didn't count on him most of last season as well. So that can be a plus, but I don't trust his fitness. I mean, I don't trust him to stay fit for an entire season. And for that reason, I don't really count him in term when I'm grading the back. Maybe that's very harsh because I rate him quite highly, but trying to be logical here in the players that I think we're going to actually have available throughout the season, I think we might be a little bit weakened there.
All right, well, let's then push forward then into our midfield grouping here, which, obviously has standouts in Enzo and Caicedo. Had Lavia, that's kind of the three core contingent from last season, but then you add in Santos, you lose Dewsbury Hall, you lose Amogu, you lose Agochukwu, and like that ends up being, and you bring in a Swig goal, as Nick is hoping he will have at least one goal this season to his name.
Goal.
So thinking about it there, Nick, is this the grouping you're most excited about, like in a season over season upgrade?
Easily. Every other team in the Premier League wishes they had our depth and strength in this position. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. Obviously,
wait, just say that again for people who say that you're negative all the time.
I'm not negative all the time.
I know. I'm just
people
saying,
hear that
for the
what they
people
want
who
to
say
hear.
that, for the people
this
who say that,
Andre
I
effect.
just want to say it again.
Yeah, no, this is a 10 out of 10, man. I genuinely think our midfield is ready to compete at every turn this year. I think you have different profiles in the midfield. Obviously, Caicedo becoming, the world-class midfielder, the prototype in that role is incredible. I am incredibly intrigued to see what happens if Cole Palmer has an extended injury absence, if Enzo kind of moves into that number 10 for a little while, potentially to kind of help bring the attack forward and have some creativity in that role. I do think that Andre is going to be a huge player in this team. I know that it might be hard to see right now and that he's kind of only been given some substitute appearances so far, but I do think that there's going to be a like light bulb moment for people watching him play that are like, wow, this guy is absolutely incredible. I think Asugo and Lavia have huge potential to play as well. We definitely have backup for Caicedo to not just do that job by himself and throw himself into everything this year. Can be a little bit choosy. So the strength and depth is critical. Every other team in the Premier League wishes they had this midfield, and I do think it's 10 out of 10.
And are you also feeling the Andre effect here as well, Jess? Is it a 10 out of 10 or like a best grouping of the squad for you as well?
I mean, I am the Andre effect. I mean, it walks with me. It is part of me.
I am
but yeah,
the storm.
Yeah. I mean, I agree completely with everything that Nick said. For me, it's the position. It's not only about the quantity, because we have the quantity now, but the quality that we have in midfield and those, talking about those two positions. It's one that I mean, I'm very comfortable if we start a midfield. Maybe people will not understand this, but because I've watched him for so long, and I think Andre's versatility really helps us here, because if we need, we can use Andre Lavia, we can use Andre Enzo, we can use Andre Caicedo. You can use, obviously, what we've seen before with Lavia Caicedo, and then you add Isugo, who has characteristics, I mean, not in terms of exact quality, but the outlines of what Caicedo can do in a team. So that just offers you so much possibility and so much options when you're talking about so many options when you're talking about rotations and the competitions that we're in, and just the quality of it, the fact that you can maintain a very strong midfield no matter who's playing. It's really great for me. So yeah, I'm going 100 out of 10. Just put Andre there. It's all I need.
I can't even have one positive moment before I get gazumped like that. Come on.
No, come on. I mean, I'm dressed for the occasion. Like I'm dressed for the occasion. Come on.
Look, we're gonna then move forward to the attack. I do think the midfield's better, just season over season, to the additions there, and then the improvements on who the backup players are. When you go to the attack, this is like a larger grouping, and I include both, because we do have a fluid attack at times. So I'm gonna go through all the units here. Just you have on the left viewing it, Gittins, Garnacho, and Sterling is still on the list in this sheet, but not listed on the club website. So you also have Mudryk with a strike through, as well as Sancho leaving. And then Ty George was going to leave, but didn't end up leaving, the whole Fulham type of situation at the very, very end. You have Palmer and Bonanate, as well as Paez, Kellyman. It's just crazy. Like, it's crazy how many players are not actually like a part of this team, but end up on lists of like, these are players associated with Chelsea Football Club. You have players like João Felix leaving, Chukwuemeka Madueke leaving, but you bring in Estevo and you have Neto, so leave that on the right hand side. You have João Pedro come in, you have Delap come in, you have Guiu come back, you have David Datro Fofana come back to the side, you have Shim available, Jackson goes on loan, David Washington apparently may come back from loan. You lose sell in Kunku and Broya. Like, you've made a huge season over season change to this attack. I think this one, Nick, is like a jury's still out. Like, net, I think it's probably about the same. Could be a little worse because I don't necessarily know. There's a lot of question marks. How quickly does Estevao fully map to an output of like 10 plus goals and assists across the entirety of the season? Like, I think it happens in season one, but like, how quickly does that happen? I don't know. You have someone like Gittins, like, doesn't map effectively to Bundesliga to Premier League. You have Garnacho on like, was he just in a very, very bad system where he was still producing numbers, and can he replicate that? Can he get better than where he was at? Can João Pedro stay as hot as possible? Can Delap come back in and be a contributor post injury? How serious is the Cole Palmer situation? I think if you're just looking at a business level, you probably feel like it's slightly better. But I think in terms of a injury plus the level of acquisition, you probably think it might be just a touch worse.
Yeah, I'm worried about it, candidly, because we're chasing more goals, and we're chasing more goals in a much better competition this year than we were in last year, obviously being in the Champions League. So I don't think the left wing is at all settled. I would bet on Garnacho starting over Gittins if that is the way that it kind of turns out. I think he's the one with the Premier League experience. So, if it were me, that's probably what I'd do. But I'm also not ruling out Pedro Neto starting on the left-hand side immediately either. I think that, Garnacho and Gittins will probably need a little bit of time to understand what Enzo Maresca really wants from them. Perhaps they'll get a little bit of that as we kind of warm back up into the end of the international break, but I'm not counting on those chickens. Neto knows what's expected of him heading into Champions League, so wouldn't shock me. Estevao has been incredible, but again, we'll go through those first season ups and downs, and I'm just I think we've done a very good job on our South America specials of setting a bar for him, but not going too crazy, because we don't, that's just not a good thing to do. The number 10, I would just pray that Palmer is going to be okay, because you're basically saying right now with the lap hurt that João Pedro is going to be your number 9 essentially, because he's the most experienced of that group, and you're going to need him to way over index what he did at Brighton. You're also going to need Palmer again to over index in terms of goal contributions, and we're going to need to have better shot conversion this year. We're also just going to need either Estevao or Neto or Garnacho or one of these guys to do something special this year to get to the number that we need to get to. I do think that Enzo Fernandez will contribute goals and assists again. I do think that you'll probably get a little bit more from the fullbacks maybe than you did last year. I think either Guiu or Gusto or James will have more of those contributions, but I'm looking at this as goals. Like, I need goals, and I'm worried, so I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10 with the option to round up if things go better. And yeah, just hope that the shots just keep going in the back of the net. Although I think Delap getting hurt's a pretty significant turn.
And then, Jess, what's your view on the overall attack after the window has closed?
I think that, I agree that we took a risk because, we had our attack kind of gelling at a point where we were producing numbers. And whether or not people agree or not with the sale of Jackson or loan of Jackson and the sale of Nani, you're talking about players that what they contributed with, the goals and assists, what they could do. So it's always a risk when you rip that apart for unknown factors and unknown quantities, which, our wingers are basically outside of maybe Pedro Neto. And so I completely understand there's a risk, but I'm going to be positive here, actually. I think that if it doesn't work out, it's not going to be much different. I think the worst that this group might give us is what we saw or close to what we saw last season. But if it goes right, the chance that it goes right, I think it goes incredibly right. It goes João Pedro has been very impressive. Stevão maybe is one of the reasons that I'm so optimistic, because I'm a huge fan of his. We've talked about him before on the podcast and what we expected of him and the talent that he has, but I don't think that people, and myself included, expected him to just, I'm not even going to say adapt, but to perform to the level that he is performing, which is not even his best, but just he seems comfortable. He seems to understand, what Maresca wants. He seems to understand what the players alongside him want. And I think that's a big plus for us because we can count on him. Also, the fact that we kept Tyreek George might help us out here because, as Nick says, if Maresca doesn't feel comfortable maybe using Gittins or Garnacho right off the bat, then with Delap injured, we saw Tyreek George maybe almost like he was the false nine or the center, the attacker, and then you have João Pedro more behind him, and that's an option that we do have right now if you need it with injuries and all of that. So maybe it's just me being silly optimistic with this one, but I just have a good feeling. I would say my main worry is also on the left hand side because of the fact that it's not like we know what Pedro Neto can offer us and all of that. We understand a little bit more about him. We know that Cole can play on the right, and then you add Stevão that can just explode, right? On the left, we went really rogue, right? We added two young players, they were not settled, they were not, we just don't know what they're going to do for us. I do agree. I think Garnacho might actually impress a few people, maybe myself included, because I've been a very harsh critic of this transfer. But because we already had Gittins, it would have been the same if we went for Garnacho first and then after Gittins. It's just the need for maybe a little bit more experience there. But I don't know. It's just it's a feeling. My main worry is the same as Nick's, and I think the same as everyone. With Delap injured, what happens if João Pedro gets injured? Because we know he has a history with injuries, and he's not the most reliable and hasn't been the most reliable. So that's the main worry for me. And the main issue I had with Nico Jackson's deal going at the last second, because if it was something that we did early on in the window or anything, then we would have been able to look for a solution in the market and really think through what we're going to do. And right now we have Gu, who, maybe now I'm being less optimistic because I don't really expect Enzo Maresca to start with him. I'm not sure if anyone does. I don't think he had a lot of trust when it came to you starting in Premier League games and all of that. And we saw a lot of Pedro Neto there as well. So that's not something that I think is going to change. So when it comes to rotation for João Pedro and allowing João Pedro to have a rest, I don't think you adds that much. And this is my main concern. So I would have been over the moon, overjoyed. If we had Nico Jackson, I would say 100% better than last season. Right now, about the same, but a little bit, I would say, I would consider it an improvement. Trying not to think about the Delap injury, I would say an improvement. With the Delap injury, just silly optimistic, but I think we're going to be happy this season.
Well, I do think and Chelsea are going to give the individual supporters and all of us a lot of opportunities to be happy and excited this season with just the start that we have underway. Also, being champions of the world, never a bad thing. But I think there are just a couple of like hanging questions that we have heading out of this one, which is just, Nick, what happens to Raheem Sterling? What ends up happening to Ty George, who was going to leave and then didn't leave, and now is going to be here for this season? What happens to Axel Disasi, who apparently had interest from multiple Premier League clubs and decided not to advance with any of them from a player side? So, like, I mean, there are still a few situations. I mean, I do feel like Raheem Sterling was like an almost immovable object. And so, like, the fact that it didn't go through, like, I don't know how much I hold that against the directors who, like, that was not of our current sporting directors. They were not in place when we brought Raheem Sterling in. And so, like, I don't hold them accountable for trying to move on what is the most difficult and challenging of any of the contracts we have left in our team. But it is still a bit of an albatross.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to happen to him is that he will, if he wants to play football, he's going to have to figure out a way to take a wage cut or get Chelsea to pay his wages to play somewhere else. No team is going to take him on 325K a week. No team's going to pay more than 15 million pounds for him, and that's just what it is. I mean, we're at a 30-year-old Raheem Sterling now, right? So this is not the 27-year-old that we signed. He's been playing steady since he was 16. He's almost been playing half of his life of Premier League football, which is an insane thing to say. And yeah, that's what happens to him. Disasi, I have no clue. I think it screams January transfer to a team that's had a center back crisis, and he'll probably do a job there. I'm not too concerned about either one of them. They don't seem the type to throw a fit or cause any chaos behind the scenes or anything like that. I think it's just going to be a long 5 months for them to train and be a part of that quote unquote bomb squad. The Ty George thing really bothered me though, because this was a guy that they had I think tried to move. He had multiple options to move. Chose to, I think wanted to be closer to home in Fulham. They ended up pulling the deal because they had 4 or 5 other deals going, just like Chelsea do for a lot of other things. And Ty ends up being the last man in musical chairs, and so he's around. But I do think to the other point, Dan, like, I would rather have Ty George than Buonanotte. I'd rather have Ty George, potentially get minutes over, depending on like how Mark Yu is or how Fofana, David Dasher Fofana potentially is. Like, I'd rather give minutes to him and continue his development. And it's not to say that there won't be another injury somewhere where he has to come in and fill in and do a job. I think this is a critical year for him, but I also think there's a January solution for him as well. So the sporting directors did a fantastic job for most of these sales. Moving these last couple pieces shouldn't be totally held against them in my mind, but the Thai one really does sting.
Just any other ones that are hanging around in your head that we have not talked about that we would want to just add a few last closing thoughts on before we say goodbye to the summer 2025 transfer window?
Not really, like, in terms of players that we haven't really talked about Facundo Buonanotte. I don't know if you have thoughts about it. I have a lot of thoughts on that transfer. I'll talk a little bit, but I just wanted to say that also we do have, like, I think Turkey window is still open, and then Saudi. Not expecting. I mean, we've had reports that neither Disasi or Sterling want to move there, but it's just we have to keep an eye out that maybe something does happen. And then I have a question that if it doesn't, what are the odds that maybe one, particularly Disasi, gets back into the team? I'm not saying it's what I want, but I think it's a game of circumstance in his case. So I could see something happening there if we have maybe an injury before January with Wesley Fofana or Josh or whatever. Maybe not, but it's something that I could see developing. And as for Facundo, for me, it's not so much about the player itself. I understand he's a very young player. He has experience. He's played for Argentina before, knows Garnacho, knows Enzo, all of that. Has shown like glimpses of quality and scored some goals. I think we've all watched that. But at the same time, last season he was not a mainstay on a Leicester side, and that's interesting for me because you can analyze that in both ways. You can say that, oh, he wasn't able to perform that well because it was a struggling side, but at the same time, you can say the opposite. You can say that he was in a struggling side and he could make a name of his own inside that team and just be a part of starting 11. Since November, he just kind of lost his spot there at Leicester. So it's not what I mean. You're not talking about this sure name, right? Someone that can really elevate us, can really, that what they're going to offer to the side. And so for that reason, I don't understand. And I've seen people say, okay, but that's why we went with a loan, or that's why, it's just covered for early cup rounds and all of that. And the problem I have with that is that if that's the only reason you got him is for early cup rounds or whatever, then use the academy, right? You know that we have a really talented academy, that we're not asking for any of them to be senior players and play every game in the Premier League, but you have the cups and the early rounds and all of that. Just trust them. So for that reason, I don't really understand. And if he does end up being an incredible player for us, then it's just frustrating because we don't have an option to buy. So just the structure of the deal itself, I don't really get. It's nothing about the player. I know a little bit about him, but not too much. I have a really strong opinion on him either way. But it's one of those that are just like, I really don't understand the logic behind it. But I mean, he's here. I hope he smashes it. I think we all do. I mean, if he performs and he does well for us, then Chelsea does well. So that's all we all want.
Yeah, I mean, as we always say on this one, if they're wearing the Chelsea badge, we're rooting for them till the end to get good and to be a part of winning trophies, which is always the best part of being a Chelsea player. I tend to think, not having ever been a player, but just getting to watch the players when they celebrate a trophy lift, seems like it's pretty good. But anyway, that's our thoughts on the summer 25 transfer window. We got more pods coming out this week. Look, the men are on international break, but the Chelsea women are about to get back into full swing of things. I mean, we saw the one photo of Sonia Bon Pastor like in air, like kicking the ball.
Scissors.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, incredible. If that doesn't get you hyped for the upcoming Chelsea women's season, an opportunity to just go win the league again, and then also try to finally fix this Champions League situation. That is all we can hope for, but we think it's going to be a really, really fun season ahead for them. So we got some wonderful previews and the match review coming your way. Don't forget you subscribe to our free weekly newsletter, The London's Blue Dispatch, written by Sam. You also can get involved in our Discord community in a free or paid capacity. You can leave 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's always appreciated. And if you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon and get notified. We always appreciate any engagement on there as well, too. But that's going to do it for this one. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep blue flag flying high.